Hey guys, it's Spencer Harp here. I'm just trying to make a quick video on troubleshooting these wiring harnesses. This is a stock harness that hasn't been trimmed down, so it's got a lot of extra wires and stuff in it. Just want to show you a couple of things. I've had a few phone calls in the past couple of days on cars that weren't getting spark and or weren't getting, the injectors weren't firing. As part of this process of trimming down a harness, you have to take and trick the computer into thinking that it's got the factory key, and the factory key or ignition switch has a resistor built into it. And so in order for that, the ECU to get that signal, there is, looking at the ECU plug, this is an 0405. You can tell the 0405 because it's got two different size plugs in a 2-row configuration. If you look right here, you can see it, sorry for the autofocusing. It's an orange and yellow wire. To bypass the key switch, the orange and yellow wire, what we would do to that is we take and follow it back down the harness a little ways to where it gets out of the critical area. What I'm calling the critical area on a many late model is right here in this zone, because there's a lot of bending and stuff that happens when you're plugging and unplugging a harness. What we usually do is we take this orange and yellow wire, and you're going to cut that wire and when you're trimming the harness down, and then we wind up connecting it to, there it is further down the harness, we connect it to one of the orange and white wires right here, orange and white wire, but it's not a direct connection. It has to go through a 100 ohm resistor. So you take a 100 ohm resistor, you solder it on the end of the orange and yellow wire, and then connect the other side of the resistor to the orange and white. What happens with racing and stuff, you know, and vibrations, and even sometimes when you're installing the harness, you can overwork that resistor back and forth, and it'll break that resistor, which would cause a fault in the computer, and the fuel pump and the coils and stuff like that would not work. What we've been doing on the most recent builds, probably in the last year and a half, we've been encapsulating that resistor in epoxy, trying to prevent it from being able to be broken just by moving the wiring harness around. The other thing that we bypass on these harnesses is the tip over sensor. This is the only other thing that would cause the ECU not to generate a spark or ignition signal. It's got 3 wires on this tip over sensor. If you look at them closely, it's got a red, a black, and a brown, and they're in that order. So what you have to do here is you would cut this off to bypass it, cut it off, and then you put a resistor in between the red to black with a 150 ohm resistor. Then you put another resistor in between the black and brown. So it's a 150 ohm resistor in between these two and a 150 ohm resistor in between these two, and you just cut this off. Other than that, if the resistors are intact and they're not broken, and the orange and yellow wire has its resistor intact, everything should be working fine unless there's something torn up in the ECU itself or a fried circuit in the ECU. Like there is a major short or something like that, it may fry a particular circuit on the ECU, which would require an ECU replacement. These motors have 2 different pickups on them. They have a crank trigger signal, and they also have a cam position sensor. So the crank signal comes in on a 2-wire plug. It's a side stand switch there. We've got that leg. Let's move over here. This upper side. Let's go to the cam first because I can identify it pretty quickly. This is your cam sensor plug. Just check and make sure that the pins and all are in the correct, they're not pushed out by mistake. Sometimes when you're plugging and unplugging these plugs, it'll push one of the wires back. Going on through this deal here. It's a 2-prong plug for the crank sensor right here. It rolls over the side of the crankshaft. I wish I had one hooked up to a motor. I could show you that. But anyway, if you're trying to troubleshoot this guy and you're not getting spark, cut back the harness. You shouldn't have to go any further than, like, you know, maybe about that far down the harness, removing the tape in order to be able to find the resistors that we're talking about. The tip over sensor resistors, what we usually do with those is we try to run those out one of the legs so they're in a safe location where they don't get broken. If you have any questions, give us a call, shoot me a text. Thanks.